As has been spoken about, I'm going to talk to you about the Army this morning. The Army is a huge organisation, and myself and my team, we're all from the Infantry, which is one part of the Army, what we think is the most important part. To give you an idea of the range of jobs within the Army as a whole, you've got Royal Armoured Corps, the guys that drive and fight in tanks, the Royal Artillery, are the guys that fire the big guns, the Royal Signals that your Army cadets are affiliated with, they're all to do with signals and communication and radios and how we talk to each other on the battlefield. The bottom left hand corner you've got the REME, the Royal Electrical and Mechanical Engineers. So if you want to be a mechanic on one of the vehicles in the Army, you join them. And they're just a range, there are more. You can be a clerk in the Army, you can be a bridge builder in the Army. There are loads of jobs, but I'm going to talk to you about the infantry. So my corporals, if they'd like to stand up. Cpl Crickmore on the right, Cpl Thorpe, Cpl Trevail, Cpl Stratton-Lee and Cpl Humphrey-Lomberg. We are all part of a training team in Catterick, in North Yorkshire. It's about 5 hours drive north. And there we take people like yourselves who know nothing about the Army, who've just joined, and we take them from civilians who've just joined the Army, and by the time they finish with us, we turn them into professional soldiers. And the time they have with us is about 14 weeks. The time it takes to go through the whole training is about 26, 27 weeks, if you pass it first time. And in that time, we can take you from knowing nothing about the Army to being professional soldiers. And what does that involve? What is it that we do? So this is me thinking off the top of my head, and it doesn't cover everything, but up there you can see that we spend a huge amount of time training. We train to fight, to accomplish whatever comes next, and that might be the next fight, it might be disaster relief, it might be anti-poaching and training other people, it might be peacekeeping, which is a big part of what we do, and also mentoring, and then the last piece that's really special to us, because nobody else in the Army can do it, is war fighting. So training. This is Cpl Humphrey-Lomberg in the cold in Norway, training to fight in sub-zero temperatures. But training normally looks something like that. And that's us training to fight the next fight, to fight the next war, and to go abroad and conduct operations. But it encompasses everything. So every morning you'll do some sort of fitness on most days, because you need to be fit to fight. And then you might train to drive or to work on vehicles. You'll train in the tactics that you need to fight a conflict, but you might also train in map reading, in using a radio. You name it, if the job needs it, we have to train it. And that's what a lot of our time is spent doing. The next aspect, so of the slideshow, this is the only picture that I've had to trawl the internet for. The rest of it is all pictures of us doing our job. The next aspect is disaster relief. So you might see it sometimes in the news, is that British soldiers are deployed in the UK to help in flood response, or to help fight fires in the northeast. British soldiers are often called on to help emergency services when they just don't have the manpower. And we need to help secure the population and make sure that people like yourselves in remote parts of the countryside or even in cities are safe. But that doesn't just happen in the UK. When the Ebola crisis kicked off in Africa, the Army was sent out to help. When hurricanes hit the Caribbean, the Army is sent out to help. Because we have specialists who know how to survive and how to work in really tough conditions. And that's why we get sent there. The other thing is training others. I was lucky enough to get sent on an anti-poaching mission in Gabon, which is next to Nigeria in Central Africa. This is us training park rangers how to survive, how to work, and how to thrive in the jungle. And some of that is map reading, some of that is how to conduct a patrol, some of that is how to live in the jungle under a sheet of plastic. To give you an idea of what we were up against, that little smudge of water there, that is the footprint of a gorilla. Yeah. 2 minutes before, we'd heard him shouting, and then we got to the water, to the riverbed, and that's my hand next to it. And we got to the riverbed and we saw he was actually quite close by. But that's the kind of animal that we're fighting to protect. And we're helping train the locals, because across the world, the British Army has this incredible reputation. We are very, very good at what we do. And so everyone, or almost everyone, wants some sort of training from us, because we're very good at delivering it. And so we go out and we help locals impart that knowledge, and we give them that knowledge to help them fight whatever mission they're trying to accomplish. Be that anti-poaching, be that disaster relief and giving aid, be that fighting a local insurgency or terrorists or whatever they may be. Peacekeeping is the next step up. We've been involved in operations all over the world, peacekeeping. The last big one was probably Bosnia, when two rival factions started a conflict and then ended up in a genocide, and the British Army was sent out with other nations to support, to help stop that conflict and stabilise the region. This is Corporal Humphrey-Lomberg kicking in a door. These are all Estonians, because we're deployed in Estonia to prevent a conflict there and keep the peace between Estonia and Russia. But it's all in support of local agencies where we deploy to help them stabilise their own country. And the last one, mentoring. So that's Corporal Thorpe doing a great job on the back of a donkey. Mentoring is a step up from training others. So you train them, and then you go out and help them deliver what you've trained them to do. So I might train you to go on a patrol, and then I go out on patrol with you and see how you're doing, pick you up, give you some encouragement, give you some pointers, and basically grade you so that next time we train you, we know where you need training in. And it's just giving you that kind of cushion of safety with someone who knows exactly what they're doing behind you to support you in your job. And that's a piece that the Army's starting to increase, and with a job that we're doing more and more of. And this is the last one, war fighting. This is one of the only jobs that's special to the infantry. The rest of the Army is there to support us to do this. And at times it's quite dangerous, as you'd expect. At times it's quite scary, as you'd expect. But that is what we've joined the Army to do, and that's what excites us. And everyone else in the Army, like I've said, is there to support us to do that. And if you get rid of everything else, the Army has to be able to do this. And that's Corporal Humphrey-Lomberg in Afghanistan. Carrying a lot of weight, probably. So about the infantry, there are a load of different jobs in there. The one you're probably most familiar with is at the bottom, ceremonial and public duty. So outside Buckingham Palace, the guys dressed in red with the massive black hats, they're on ceremonial duty. But they are real soldiers who, for 6 weeks of the year, go and parade outside Buckingham Palace. And that's an honour to do that. There are also physical training instructors. So a normal gym instructor, we've got them in the Army as well. I've got, in the team in front of you, we've got a reconnaissance platoon operator, we've got a sniper, we've got assault pioneers, and we've got experience across the board. So in this training team, we've got those roles that you can see up there. And those roles give the infantry a breadth, a capability to deliver whatever we need to go and do, so that we can pick special people to do special jobs whenever the time comes. These things on the right then, the light infantry, it's kind of different flavours of the infantry. We don't all go to battle in the same way. The most famous is probably the airborne infantry in the bottom right here, bottom left even. And they're the guys that wear the maroon berets, the kind of pinky purple ones, and they jump out of planes with parachutes or out the back of a helicopter. And they're quite famous and sometimes used in conflict. The light infantry is the next, it's probably the simplest, and those guys walk everywhere, they carry their lives on their back, huge amounts of weight, 70 or 80 kilos at times, and they do battle with their lives on their back. It's the simplest, it's the most versatile, and sometimes it's the only way we can fight. Armoured infantry, there. That's where I come from. So basically, you live in a mini tank, and the tank has got space for 7 people in the back. And so you drive up to the position, you've got a little cannon on the front of the tank, and as you get to the enemy, 7 people jump out the back of it, and you do that final assault. Mechanised and light infantry there are a bit like combat taxis. So they're armoured vehicles, they'll drive you close to the battlefield, your soldiers will get out, and then you walk the last bit. And then the specialised infantry here is the last piece. It's quite new, we've recently added it to the party. And they're particularly interested in that training others and mentoring piece that I talked about. The thing that is starting to grow as we're looking at operations and environments abroad where we think our allies could use some help. That's where we send the specialised infantry. Before it becomes a conflict, to stop it becoming a conflict, we send those guys in as small teams to train, to mentor, to help our allies develop their capabilities. So what do you get from the army and from a career in the infantry? We've had the chat about apprenticeships. We offer an apprenticeship in the infantry that transfers over, if you were to leave the army, gives you some sort of qualification so that you can find a job outside the army. But also we give you driving licences. So you'll learn to drive a car if you haven't already, but then you could learn to drive a minibus, a truck, a full-size lorry, or a warrior, so a mini tank. But the big one is leadership and management. And I think that's the key skill that the army teaches that is very, very difficult to learn elsewhere. We get taught leadership because at a certain point I am trusted to lead these guys into battle and to ask them to do things that they probably don't want to do. Get into dangerous situations and take their soldiers with them at the risk of their own lives. And that requires leadership, and the army trains us in leadership. And that is a skill that's very hard to train outside of the army, outside of such a dangerous environment. And that is a skill that employers look at with envy. But what are the extra benefits? So the army is obviously a dangerous and challenging career, and at times quite tough. But there are tons of benefits, and I'll touch on some of them. So sport and exercise. That's me there, and that's Corporal Humphrey-Lomberg in Canada on a sevens rugby tournament. The army will pay you to play sport. I've been paid to go play rugby in Canada and rugby in New Zealand. You can get paid to play football, you get paid to go cycling, pretty much any sport that you can think of, the army does. It also trains you in new sports, so most of the bobsleigh team in the Winter Olympics has come through the armed forces. My instructors, when I went through training, one of them was a skeleton rider, and that's is basically a skateboard on an ice rink, and you go at over 100 miles an hour down a mountain. It's mad. But any sport, the army probably covers it. Next one's adventurous training. That's Corporal Thorpe, skiing. The Army's the organisation that taught me to ski, and some of my instructors down here. Any sport that is too weird and wonderful to really be classed as a sport, we class as adventurous training. And that takes you abroad to really hone your skills in something that is scary. The point is, it's supposed to be scary. Throwing yourself down a mountain as fast as you possibly can is terrifying at times. As I'm sure some of you may have seen or will see if you go on a ski trip. Yeah, it's terrifying, it's supposed to be. We are training moral courage when we go on adventurous training. And that covers skiing, it covers rock climbing, it covers sailing, because ocean sailing is really, really quite difficult. It covers a whole range of sports that will take you all over the world. Our unit is taking, I think, 15 soldiers to Morocco to go climbing in the mountains there. I've been to France and Austria skiing, everything. We cover it. You even get paid to jump out of a plane if you want to do parachute jumping or skydiving. Pay, we heard it on the apprenticeship talk. Army pay is quite good. The best thing about army pay is that you don't lose a lot of it. As a civilian outside of the army, you'll be paying for rent, you'll be paying council tax, you'll be paying quite a lot on your food bill. And I know it's not something that you, as Year 10s, have ever really thought about, but when you get £15,000 and as a civilian you lose £10,000 of it because the government takes a chunk, and then your house takes a chunk, and then your food takes a chunk, you've only got a little bit to play with. But as the army, you keep most of the money you earn. As a recruit in training, you're not even doing the job, you're just learning how to do it, and you're still getting paid £15,671. As soon as you finish training, you're automatically on £20,000. And then every promotion you get a pay increment, and you get more money for it. What I've not put on there is officer training and officer life, to reflect the extra time you spend in education. Officers and the different responsibility they have after they finish training. Officers get a different pay scale, they get paid slightly more, but they are comparable. And then travel. The army will take you all over the world, everywhere. These are all the countries that, amongst the 6 of us, we've been to. Just us 6. We've gone on operations in Estonia, Iraq and Afghanistan. We've had people based in Germany and Cyprus. I've been on that rugby tour to New Zealand I talked about. I've had people go to South Africa, the USA, Belize, to go and train in the jungle out there, and obviously Africa, like I mentioned. We cover the entire world, and that's just the 6 of us. The army is deployed literally everywhere. You name a country and they've probably been there. And that's the infantry. Like I said, the army covers all of it. The infantry is the only organisation that gets to do that last bit of war fighting. And I think we're the best at everything else as well.